The content in this podcast may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome back to Strange and Mundane, episode 3.
Welcome back.
So I did some scrolling on my phone earlier today and actually came upon some news from Fox in Utah. Ooh. So apparently the government has been doing they've been doing some research into some possible paranormal events happening in Utah. It's kind of weird, to be honest. There's not a whole lot of information on it. It's just like the fact that the government's like actually looking in to like paranormal, like it was like shadow people.
Well, wasn't there like a point a few, like I want to say months ago, but probably years ago, where basically like the Pentagon or something came out and said like, yeah, we've discovered unidentifiable aircraft, basically. Yeah, it's
like they haven't denied or they haven't straight said that they've seen stuff, but they're also saying that like
they have evidence of, and
stuff.
Nobody blinked. Everybody was just carrying on, and I'm like, we cannot pretend. That was like the midst of
COVID, though, right?
Yeah, but I'm like, we cannot pretend like the government didn't just come out and say, yeah, UFOs are a thing, and just breeze right past it.
Well, it's interesting because it's one thing for the government to announce unidentified flying objects and other. I think there's a different word for it, and it's just like escaping me right now because they changed it from UFO.
Right.
But it's interesting on the sense of like the government kind of going with the fact that, hey, yeah, we've seen some stuff, but we can't really confirm nor deny that it's human. And I think with most probabilities, we could assume that there's life somewhere in space. You know, Absolutely. We can't be the only ones.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting when you're seeing that the government itself is like sending investigations into paranormal events. So like ghosts and shadow people, stuff like that. Like it's interesting to finally get like that confirmation of like, hey, yeah, it's not just like a fairy tale or a little...
It's like if the government was like, by the way, the Loch Ness monsters were
right. If they started an investigation that they were gonna find or search for the Loch Ness monster, it'd be a different thing.
Which is so trippy because isn't like 70% of the ocean undiscovered?
Yeah, the Loch Ness monster was a lake though. That was the big thing with the Loch Ness monster. Oh, that's
right. All right. I'm not super big into that. I know a lot about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I know a lot about like skinwalkers. I don't know that I think the Loch Ness monster was such a far fetch for me, really. Mostly because I'm like, people see weird things in the water, but I mean, I've seen octopus, squid.
No, there's plenty of things.
Sharks,
it's just
even the freaking orcas right now with attacking boats. Like they do some weird stuff. I don't know.
I remember some people doing some tests, like trying to like determine like what things might have tricked people into a Loch Ness monster before.
Right.
Whether it was like driftwood, snakes.
Right.
Possibly
like a snake, a super large snake.
I think they were even like saying like an elephant trunk.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's a little far-fetched for me. But I could see if you had like a large snake, which I could get behind, I could understand like if a large snake stuck its head out of water. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, then maybe you're like, hey, sea monster.
100%, yeah. Which honestly is a fucking sea monster.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do not want to see a snake in the water any more than I want to see a shark or an alligator.
Especially because like most sea snakes are like highly venomous.
Oh, 100%. Too. And not nice.
Yeah, no, they're territorial.
Yeah. So the news is basically confirming the paranormal?
Not necessarily confirming, because from what that report was saying, there isn't any actual evidence that they had found yet. But it's just the fact that they opened up the investigation.
It's interesting because when I just looked up paranormal news earlier, there was like a bunch of stories which I didn't really want to cover because they weren't interesting enough to like really get into.
Yeah.
But like there was one where apparently at a bar or a saloon, like a guy's beer just randomly flew off the table and a bunch of people have video of it and they just can't figure out what happened. Just at a restaurant, no earthquake, nothing happening, just a guy's beer randomly flies off the table. And there's several different users and people that were there that got video of this.
Yeah.
And there's just no explanation in it. You brought up earlier, too, the video we had watched on TikTok because we love a good scary deep dive.
The guy in the high
balloon.
School. Yeah, the
and
guy
people
at the
were trying.
Janitor at high school. It's a high school in like Arizona.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where.
And people deep dived into that, and people were like, I still cannot figure it out. And like people were like static or this or that, but then there was a bunch of people that were like, no, this doesn't.
There was too much in that video combined and the video was long enough to really kind of disprove those possible fishing line, things like static electricity, for making that balloon move. There was definitely a lot of speculation about this guy possibly faking this video, but a lot of people were like corroborating his story that that high school itself is haunted and it was built on like an Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of evidence on at least other people's accounts as far as just the video goes, from some experience of video production of my own. I wasn't seeing anything that looked obviously like an edit.
Right. No, I watched it a lot of times. And I did read the comments because I was like, okay, I want to see the critics. I love the critics. I'm a critic myself. I think that it's fascinating because I was doing a little bit of a deep dive too. And there's a lot of haunted places in Arizona, supposedly. Yeah. Like haunted restaurants, hotels. And so I'm excited for us to kind of go on some adventures and...
Yeah, we'll definitely do...
we gotta go to Jerome.
We'll do some visits around Arizona, check out some of the haunted places, and we'll do future episodes on those. It'll be nice we'll post pictures from our visit and then just have a whole episode where we just talk about the experience.
Totally. Yeah, we gotta document it.
So one of the topics that we had kind of chanced upon was the inspiration behind the Blair Witch, which is interesting because we actually have some experience living out there.
You know... Honestly, that movie is one of the best, like, live footage films.
One of the found footage, like one of the first few found footage films that was actually pretty successful.
Oh, 100%. I don't think I've actually watched a single one since that I thought was good. Like, you know, there was Paranormal Activity or, I mean, is that even in the same category really, though?
Yeah, Paranormal Activity is still considered one of the found footage films.
And the first one was creepy, but granted, I was way younger. Now I'm just kind of like...
I was a huge fan. I loved them.
I did, but still, I don't think it stands close to the Blair Witch. The Blair Witch really creeped me out, like, pretty bad.
The Blair Witch, the thing with that was just because witchcraft in general is a pretty big topic and a pretty big folktale for a lot of different civilizations, different towns. And so when the Blair Witch had kind of came out, it kind of re-sparked that fear of the woods, fear of the unknown, witches hiding in the woods or living in the woods and possibly getting spells or anything like that, curses.
So for a little backstory, I love to deep dive, and I got lost in the Appalachian Mountain Trail TikTok side of creepy Bigfoot spottings and skinwalkers, and then we got into the movies. I watched Wrong Turn. I want to watch the 2003 one though, but it's hard to find. It's hard to find. But I think what's interesting is when we lived in Maryland, we lived on a 4-acre, plot of land in the woods, really, with neighbors. But I mean, the neighbors were not real close.
It was kind of like just beyond or just at the edge of like your normal vision.
And I just remember that, like, at the time, I think our biggest fear was ticks. Like, they were like blueberries in our house, and I was just like, oh. But if you think about it, it's so weird to think we lived literally engulfed by the woods, and
the area that it was totally inspired by.
And I think about it now, we mostly hung out during the day outside. We mostly never were really outside at night. And I just can remember, like, a couple times I'd drive home from, like, an appointment or something, and it was late, and it was dark, and it was really creepy.
Yeah, you'd see, like, reflections of, like, deer eyes and stuff like that. And
you didn't know what you were seeing, and it was eerie. So it's so weird to think that we lived in a place where so many people have weird experiences, and I don't really have one of my own, but I can say there's just a very eerie feeling of living in that plot of land.
Yeah, those woods definitely just kind of give you that eerie feel.
Yeah.
That there's always something out there, just because you can't see anything doesn't mean that something can't see you.
But isn't it creepy that there's this entire witch or supposed witch who once existed in Maryland, and it's crazy to think that
they even made a holiday for it.
Yeah, like they memorialize it.
Yeah. So the witch that we were talking about is actually the story of Moll Dyer. So Moll Dyer was a woman that was around during the 17th century. And that was around the time of the Salem witch trials. So you already have that really high kind of fear of witchcraft, magic, spells, any kind of curses like that. It was really easy, especially during those Puritan times, to blame problems that were going on in whether it was like a plague, whether it was just kind of dry land, like a bad plot.
Right.
One season. It was very easy to turn around, especially with the way faith was in the Puritan church, to blame it on witchcraft.
It's so odd to think that there was a point in time where, I see all the time, I'll be scrolling Twitter threads, whatever, and it'll be like, I'm a witch, let me read you my tarot cards. And I'm like...
And how far it's changed.
And I just scroll past. I'm like, okay, well, you do you, right? And like, you do you. But I think that it's funny because... in the 17th century, you were chastised for being a witch.
No, they would hang people.
Right.
They would burn them.
Yeah, you weren't. Yeah, absolutely not. So now just to think that people are allowed to proclaim, like, I'm a witch, and I'm just like, okay. And let's just keep scrolling. I'm just like, all right, maybe you are. I don't have enough experience, but that's cool. And I'm like not beheading people.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at it now because during this time, I mean, what had happened with this woman was that she was just known to be like an herbalist. So she made remedies and medicines with...
Wasn't she a healer?
Yeah, and she'd use those remedies to kind of heal people. And so something where you would think this is a positive kind of event or a positive person, somebody that's bringing something to the community... The moment they had a harsh winter that ruined crops and they had sickness was pouring through, they just instantly blamed her.
Isn't that interesting how when we can't make sense of what's going on around us, we come up with the most crazy theories about what, honestly, right? About what it could be. It's
really hard for a lot of people, especially during that time and even like now, for people to take blame for certain events. It's hard to just also be like, things are out of my control.
Right. Sometimes crops are just bad that year and it's the soil and it's not you. But maybe it's just the soil. Maybe there wasn't enough rain that year. Maybe there wasn't enough sun. I don't know.
And imagine like being a person during that time, having something like that happening. And your first thought is to go burn this woman's house down.
Yeah. Imagine now. Like, if someone said they were a witch, like, we'd put them probably in a psyche hospital.
Or
like,
if I had bad crop, if I was a farmer and I just had a bad season, it's that thought that I wouldn't go burn the old lady's house down from down the road just because she looks scary and
now my crops are bad.
Yeah, she looks scary and she has a bunch of plants.
The math isn't mathing.
It's not mathing at all. But she had escaped from her house during that fire, and they had found her body the next day with her hand frozen to a rock and her other hand outreached towards the sky.
Which is trippy, and we need to share that photo in our our Instagram because I wish we would have saw it when we were there.
And the speculation is that she was casting a curse on all the people for burning her house down. But it's interesting today that Leonardtown, as a town in Maryland, has that as a holiday. Like, they have that rock on display where you can see the handprint.
Which is literally where we were.
Yeah. No, we were just outside of Leonardtown. Well,
and our son was born there, and we spent a lot of time there. I mean, even when you first got out there, before I had, you were staying in Leonardtown. Yeah. Before we had made it out to
I was staying in like Airbnbs out there, and that was like a whole other experience too.
So like, imagine if we had known about this then. I think that would have changed my perspective of the woods, to be quite honest.
Would have added a little more fear. I think we were still kind of spinning a little bit off the stranger still, just because that was the time where we were finally in some woods. But yeah, no, that story and knowing that story definitely would have changed my outlook.
Well, if you think about it, just to get down from where we lived to the base of to get to the highway was what, 15 minutes?
Especially, 15 minutes of straight woods.
And then once you got to the highway, it was a 30-minute drive at least into town. So even if something like a crisis had happened, we were a pretty hefty drive out to get to us.
Yeah, no, it was isolating.
Yeah, and you felt that. Like, I felt that. So there were definitely a couple nights where I got home late and I was like, this is an eerie feeling. Like, if I had to call 911, how long till
And we
they're
didn't
here?
have, remember that we didn't have a curtain on that outside window?
Do you remember we didn't have a freaking lock on our door for a while?
Yeah. We were renting that basement apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just, and I remember the night that there was like a tornado warning and you ran upstairs because there was a sound and I ran to the glass because brilliant me. But, honestly, thinking about it now, we had that big glass slider and 0 curtains over it.
No, so that, like, I think I had like a little eerie feeling like a few of the nights, the first few nights that we were there when we like first turned the lights off, and just really felt how dark it was. And I think you and I are so used to like city noises, we're living in suburbia right now, but there's still noises of people with music going by, but it was quiet out there.
Oh, 100%. And every so often you'd hear the guy next door with his gun. But I mean, even next door was like, let's say a crisis happened and I had to go knock on a neighbor's door. I have to trek quite a bit of a way. To get there, I'm probably dead by the time I get to their door, really. So when I was kind of searching through my paranormal, weird, creepy, cringy news of the week, I stumbled upon this TikTok of Joe Rogan talking to Aaron Rodgers on his podcast.
Okay.
And I love Joe Rogan because he's very diverse.
He'll go over every topic.
And they discussed this theory by Bob Lazar, which I was a big fan of him in high school because I was all into the theory of reptilian beings and I got all into that. And there's this theory that basically, Bob Lazar claims that he worked in Area 51 on these back engineered crafts, right?
Yeah.
And he claims that basically we are vessels. So there's this theory that there's these multi-dimensional beings and they're basically utilizing us as a farm to house souls.
Interesting.
And then when we die, we transform into whatever they are, wherever they exist, in whatever universe or wherever. It's
almost like moving on to like the next life.
Which is fascinating because what Joe Rogan points out is like, this is the closest theory we've had to God.
Yeah, that's
connected to aliens ever. Which is I got stuck on this theory because I have for a long time, grappled with the idea of religion and God and what Aaron Rodgers even points out is people don't kind of back when we were talking about the Blair Witch and Moll Dyer, and it's people don't know how to explain what they don't know. Yeah. So they just come up with whatever.
Yeah, whatever fits the bill.
Right. So they're, when Aaron Rodgers is like, well, people back in the day, if they see something in the sky, they're like, it's Ezekiel, but it's a spaceship. They don't know that it's a spaceship. They don't know how to describe a spaceship. Yeah. So they're like, this is Ezekiel. And it's like, oh, it's a spaceship with aliens. So it's fascinating because it's such a close tie. One of those
first few theories that actually kind of bridges religion and possible terrestrial beings.
Right. And I forever have always said, wouldn't it be fascinating if, and my favorite line is like, am I living in a simulation? But I've always thought it would be fascinating if it's like, there's more advanced technological, there's beings out there that are just far more advanced.
Well, that almost sounds like the AI theory. One of the new AI theories that it's rolling around is like, how do we know that we're not just like one tier of a different segment? Like the way that we would see dimensions is like the levels of AI.
Well, the part that tripped me up is when you showed me that video and it was talking about The Sims because I love The Sims.
Yeah, it's like if someone were to put AI into The Sims.
And now they had thoughts.
If they started having thoughts and if they started living their world of The Sims, as like if they thought that's what it was life. And
That's
what's
so
to say
crazy.
that in The Sims somehow, if they have this ability to create, what's to say that they don't create a game?
And then they start communicating with us. In
Because
whatever way.
we have multiple games, and something in that theory that I had seen was they were talking about one of the games in particular, No Man's Sky, is a game about exploring different planets and different galaxies.
Now imagine AI in that game.
And it's supposed to have like procedural generation of like billions and billions of different planets, like procedurally generated life forms on each planet. And so if we have all of that in a disk or in just like a handful of your computer's memory, what's to say that the life that we know isn't just a disk somewhere with AI? Who's to say that we're not like just some evolution of AI and life
Which
just
is
kind of repeats
such a
itself?
crazy
And
theory. But I also come across a lot of videos, again, because I love a deep dive and I love to rot and just watch stupid TikToks. But one of my favorites is people will post like the is there a glitch in the Matrix or is there a glitch in the simulation? And it's like a video of like, you know, a celebrity who like kind of is like doing an interview and really does look like they're glitching out, or it's like some weird oddity in nature or something that's happening that really can't be explained that feels like a glitch in a simulation.
yeah, it just feels wrong.
Right. Like what's happening. Like there was one video, and you know, I don't know the efficacy of any of these videos, but there was one video where a guy is walking around and he goes to these restaurants and they're all on the same block. There's like 4 or 5 restaurants, and he goes to each one and there's just one single guy sitting outside of the restaurant. So never inside. So each of these restaurants had a patio, and there's one single guy with a suit on sitting outside, head down, and all like 4 or 5 of these restaurants. And it's crazy because it's like, and he's like, is this a simulation? And so this guy's, and there's thousands and thousands of comments of people's theories and whatever's going on.
Well, it's also like, that feels like those situations where it almost feels like people load in as you show up somewhere. How it's like somehow you're always the first person to like a lunch rush at a restaurant. Like you show up, and like right after you show up, within 10 minutes, there's now 12 people have lined up to order behind you.
Think about it. How many times have you been in a restaurant and you're the only one in there, and then all of a sudden there's a rush?
Yeah, that's
It feels
exactly
weird.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it always just felt odd because it seems like it happens so many times.
And there's so many different videos and people that have claims of seeing these weird glitches.
Yeah, and it's just all these interesting theories on like different aspects of life.
Which makes me feel like I may not be attention to detail enough because I don't have any experiences, but there's definitely times where I feel like I'm in a simulation for sure.
Yeah, and then there's times like where you look at it and you're like, how could aliens have not created us? Or how is there a God? You know, like is there something that has put some external force on us? Or even to the theory of like the Big Bang, where it's just like, did we just happen over time? Is it just chance? Is it probability? What is it?
Which is hard for me to get behind because I'm always like but then what? But then what person?
Yeah.
So when you're like the Big Bang and I'm like, that's awesome, we came from nothing, but they're like, then what? And then what? So I think aliens or more technologically advanced beings make sense to me because I'm like, okay, maybe we weren't the first here. And so it makes sense that we have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Because none of us really have any idea what's going on. There's so much debate, like politically, religiously, like all the ways about what's going on. And so what's fascinating is I feel like kind of this sense of relief of like, we don't have to know because
just
hopefully somebody somewhere in another universe does.
Yeah, somebody's got to know.
Somebody's got to know. Have we found other life forms outside of Earth?
Outside of Earth, nothing yet. So there's been no, at least from what I've seen, there's been no confirmed sightings, no confirmed bacteria, anything like that. A lot of the things that we're chasing right now in space are livable planets or livable circumstances.
Didn't they find... Remember when I did that assignment on Europa and you even did the really super colossal painting for me?
Yeah.
Didn't they find organisms in the water there?
I think, and don't quote me on it, but I think it was that they had found the traces of what could possibly be water on Europa.
I thought
And
they
so
found the
with
traces
water-
of what could be life forms.
With water, people assume that you'll have life forms.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. That was one of the more fascinating assignments I did for sure.
Yeah. That about does it for time. So thanks again, everybody, for coming to take a listen. Come follow our crazy trajectory that we have. I feel like we're just like a pinball game. Just
always
bouncing from
changing.
subject to subject, but I feel like the chaos kind of adds to the fun of it. But thanks for coming out, having a listen with us. Follow us on all our socials. We're going live. We have been lately going live on a Twitch channel named Cat Who Lived. A little play on Harry Potter there. Yeah, but catch us on all our socials. Catch us on Twitch. We look forward to chatting with all of you. And have a great week. We'll see you on the next one.
See ya.